For Thanksgiving last year, I went back to my parents' house. Thanksgiving has been at their house for many years. Lots of family comes over and it's a big thing. I live about 30 minutes away from my parents, and after work on Wednesday, I went over to their house. I was going to help them with the cooking and getting things ready for Thanksgiving the following day. The plan was that I was just going to sleep over on the couch of their living room. I would occasionally do that sometimes when I would stay at my parents' house really late, and I was too lazy to drive back. My parents' house is pretty nice, and the couch is very comfortable as well. So anyways, when I got there, I helped them finish cleaning the house. Then we got to baking desserts and other foods that would be for Thanksgiving. This went on into the night, and we were in the kitchen, which is at the back of the house. Things were kind of loud when we were in there because we were cooking and stuff. We were also talking and had the TV on, so there was all kinds of noise. But despite all this, several times we thought that we heard noises coming from outside. Right past the kitchen at the back of the house, there's a sliding glass door leading out to the patio. Back there is some tables and chairs, but also a few bushes and trees. We thought that we heard movement. The first time, it sounded like a chair was being moved. I remember looking over, but I saw nothing, and we just carried on. But you couldn't really see outside at all because the lights were on inside and it was dark outside. We were also too busy to really think about it much. However, sometime later we heard a bush moving out there. We attribute it to the wind, but it just seemed like something more than that to me. Overall, it seemed kind of strange, but we never saw anything and we were busy, so we just wrote it off as whatever. There was one more time that it sounded like something hit the window just off the dining room in the back end of the living room. It wasn't that loud, but it was noticeable. When we looked, we did not see anything. It seemed as though maybe it was squirrels or something like that. We just didn't give it that much of a serious thought. For the last couple of hours working in the kitchen, there were no more noises from outside at all. At one point, I even went outside briefly to cool off because the kitchen was hot and I was warm from all the cooking. Soon after that, we were all done in the kitchen. I remember that a while later, we all went to bed. My parents went upstairs and I went to the living room couch to sleep. All the lights in the house were now off and it was completely quiet. I laid on the couch and tried to fall asleep. Just as I was drifting off, I heard a noise. It was coming from the sliding door leading to the patio. The door was opening very slowly. From where I was on the couch, it was kind of far away, and it was just barely out of my view. I looked in the direction, and then the door continued to open. That's when I got up from the couch. Now I had a better view. As the door opened more, I saw a man start to enter our house. As soon as I saw him, I turned and started to run away. I was going to go upstairs and lock myself in a room and call the cops and alert my parents or whatever. However, right as I started to run away, I saw the man turn back in reverse. He started going back outside and quickly left. I was halfway to the stairs when I realized that he was gone. So I stopped, turned around, and then went back over to the door. I ran over to it, closed it, and locked it. Then I called the cops and woke up my parents. It was a whole thing, and the police looked around, but the man was gone. We realized that he must have been what we were hearing throughout the night. We really thought that it was just some squirrels or something. It was also my fault because I forgot to lock the back door when I went outside earlier. But thankfully the man was gone and he hadn't done anything. He was never found. I'm glad that I was not asleep yet when he entered the house, or who knows what could have happened. This happened 3 years ago in 2022. It was Thanksgiving week, and my daughter's boyfriend had invited us over to his family's house to spend Thanksgiving there. There wasn't much space in the house, so my daughters and I had to stay in the basement. The only people who lived in the house besides my daughter's boyfriend were his grandmother, his sister, and her husband. A few more family members were supposed to be staying over as well, but since we came late that night, I didn't get to meet any of them. We stayed the first night in the house, and it was finally Thanksgiving morning. I normally wake up pretty early, so I was up at 7 a.m. I was the only one awake in the house. I went upstairs to the kitchen and sat on a chair in the kitchen. I sat for a bit just drinking some coffee and relaxing before the day began. As I was drinking my coffee, I saw a cute little boy coming downstairs. He was in his pajamas and came down to the fridge to get something to drink. I smiled at him and watched him go back upstairs. I remember thinking about how adorable he was. Well, later that day, everyone got ready and went into the kitchen and living room as we began our Thanksgiving celebration. Everybody was together and having a great time, and that's when I decided to ask out loud, "Hey, where's the cute little boy that I saw earlier this morning?" I was instantly pulled aside by the grandma of the family. She looked at me in shock and said, "Shh, careful, my daughter doesn't hear you." The grandma explained to me how her daughter's son, her grandson, died in front of the house a few years ago. He got hit by a car. Grandma told me that she sees him sometimes too, but nobody believes her. My heart instantly dropped as I couldn't believe what I had just heard. After hearing that, I couldn't help but have a weird feeling for the rest of the time that I was in that house. Later that night, my daughter and her boyfriend went upstairs to get some yogurt from the fridge. She specifically remembered grabbing a strawberry yogurt and putting back a banana yogurt she had grabbed. As they headed back down to the basement, their hearts dropped as they noticed that the banana yogurt was placed on their bed. We felt super uneasy about this. Thankfully, we ended up going home the next day, but I'll never forget how crazy those 2 days were. This happened back when I was a kid, and the year was 2003. I remember that I was 12 years old, and it was Thanksgiving Day. The tradition back then is that my family would go to my aunt and uncle's house. They lived about 30 minutes away from us, and other members of the family would be there too, like my grandparents, more aunts and uncles, and cousins. It was usually about 20 or 30 people there, and the house we would go to was pretty large. It was a little bit out there, so there was more land. The property that the house was on had a very large backyard, and there was a big open space with flat grass. Then surrounding it on almost all sides was a large woods. I'm not sure how far back of the land my family owned in the woods, but it was pretty far. On Thanksgiving every year we would have a football game in the backyard. Usually about 10 or 15 people would play in it, and most of the rest of the people would watch. A few would stay inside, but it was overall a pretty big deal. I was just old enough that I had recently started to be able to play in the big game. I was really into sports as a kid, and so I loved to go outside. I was really excited about the football game that year. We got there that year, and everybody hung out inside for a while. After about an hour or two, I decided to go outside early for the game because I was anticipating it starting soon. I left the house out the front door and was going to walk around to the back. However, as soon as I got outside, I saw this guy in the driveway. He was standing next to one of the cars, and there were a bunch of cars parked there. The driveway was next to the house, and it was pretty wide. There was also a thick amount of trees between the driveway and the next-door neighbor's property. When the man saw me, he turned around and started walking away. I didn't know whose car was whose other than a couple of people's, but it seemed to me like the man was trying to get into a car. I assumed at first that the car that he was at was his, but I also had no clue who this man was. It seemed sort of suspicious how he walked away as soon as he saw me though. And the man did not walk to the end of the driveway, and he didn't go inside either, but he walked into the trees instead. That also seemed pretty strange, and neither me nor him said anything to each other. He was quickly gone, and I figured that he was probably a neighbor or a friend or somebody else who I just didn't know. I was sure there was a logical explanation, and I just didn't give it that much thought, so I went around into the backyard and started tossing the football around. Soon after, everybody else got outside. We started the football game sometime later, and it went on for about an hour. At one point during the game, I was on the sideline looking around. For some reason, I looked over to the woods. I noticed just past the tree line that same man. He was sort of hiding behind a tree and watching the football game. I'm surprised that I saw him because it was kind of hard to tell that he was there. And now this seemed really odd. He was definitely on my family's property, and it was kind of creepy. I was wondering what he was doing there. I looked away though, and when I looked back, he was gone. Nobody else seemed to notice him, and for some reason I didn't tell anyone. I just went back to the game. After the football game was over, I pretty much forgot about the guy. We went back inside and soon after had Thanksgiving dinner. Sometime later on in the evening when everyone was hanging out, I was in the living room. A few of us were watching football on TV, and my uncle who lived at the house was talking to another one of my uncles. I overheard him saying that he thought someone had attempted to break into his car as well as their house the previous week. He was saying that he saw marks around the door of his car that he knows hadn't been there, and he said that his dog was barking like crazy that night, and when he let the dog out, he thought he heard somebody running away. He also heard some noises at the back door once, and when he went out to look, nobody was there. When I heard this, I remembered the suspicious man that I had seen. I told my uncle about it. This prompted us to get up and go outside. A group of about 5 of us walked around the property looking around. By that point, it was nearly dark out. However, when we were looking around, we didn't find the guy. We went back in, and the rest of the night, nothing strange happened. I'm not sure if he came back or not, but he wasn't able to break into anybody's cars. I'm guessing that he thought some people would forget to lock their doors at a Thanksgiving gathering. I never found out more about it. I'm not sure if he ever came back to my uncle's property or not. The years following that, the guy was never a problem. But that one year was pretty strange, especially when he was in the woods. I'm not sure why he was watching us or where he came from, but it was really creepy. I was about 15 at the time when this happened, and we always had huge Thanksgiving parties. There would usually be around 30 people cramming into our house. It wasn't your typical Thanksgiving. After dinner there was drinking, smoking, loud music, and lots of noise. This Thanksgiving I sat in the kitchen with some friends. There was a door that led to our enclosed back porch that also held the staircase to the basement. We would keep tables on the porch that held food because our kitchen was small and everyone brought a dish. As I said, I was sitting at the kitchen table with friends when I saw a man wearing blue jeans and a red silk top come up the basement stairs. At first, I thought he was a friend of one of my uncles. "Hey, what are you doing in the basement?" I asked. The man said nothing. He came walking towards me, and just then my grandma yelled aggressively, "Who are you?" Before the man could answer, my dad and 3 uncles had spotted this man. My uncles are generally aggressive and protective people, so when they heard my grandma yelling at this man to get out of our house, they instantly rushed towards him. They started beating him, yelling at him as he finally turned and ran for his life. They definitely landed a few shots before he took off. His nose was bleeding and his lip was bleeding as well. He managed to get outside into the yard and start running, but we had a German Shepherd, and she was out there and attacked the man. He was screaming, trying to get over the fence as my uncle's dad and the dog all chased after him. Finally, the man fell over the fence and escaped into the night. I ran back into the house, and the amount of blood on the porch was crazy. My mobster protectors came in about 15 minutes later and all laughed. They never called the cops. It was discovered the man had broken through a window in the basement and had rooted through some stuff down there. He was most likely a thief on his way upstairs to check out the rest of the house, thinking that he would blend in and not be noticed among the huge party. The only thing I know is that he will think twice about coming back to our house, and I'm certain that he will have some scars left from the German Shepherd who appeared to get a good bite or two of him. Something really crazy happened to me one time the night before Thanksgiving many years ago. I was going to be doing a lot of cooking for Thanksgiving and had been planning it all out. I had to go to the grocery store several times in the days leading up to it. The day before Thanksgiving, though, I realized I had forgot one ingredient. Somehow I had forgotten it, but it was very important. I needed to get it, so that night I told my husband that I would be right back, and I left for the local grocery store. It's a pretty average-sized store, and it has anything you could need. When I got there, I went inside, and it was extremely busy. I wasn't surprised about that, but luckily I only needed one thing. I started making my way through the store, which was kind of challenging with all the people. Soon I was in an aisle where I thought I would find what I needed. I looked around for a couple of minutes, and I finally found it and picked it up. At that point, I was kind of in the back corner of the store. It wasn't the very back, but it was one of the last aisles. Before I could start walking to the front, though, a random guy approached me. He told me to stop and said that he needed to talk with me. The way that he was talking made it sound like either he worked there or he was trying to be all professional. He was just some random guy. I asked him what he was talking about, and he said that I needed to come with him. He said that he was a secret shopper and he worked for store security. Then he said that he saw me shoplifting, which I could not believe. I said that there had to be a mistake because I never did anything. At that point, I was very confused. I wasn't completely sure if he had me mixed up with someone else or if he was full of crap or what. But I knew that there was no way anybody could think that I had shoplifted. The only thing I touched the whole time was the item that I had in my hand that I was going to buy. I had never put it in my coat or anything. When I tried telling the guy that I didn't do anything, he said that I could tell my side of the story later on. He said in the meantime I had to come with him, and there was no arguing that. He said that we had to leave the store out of a back entrance. Then he started to walk further towards the back, encouraging me to follow, but I didn't. I said I wasn't going anywhere. It seemed too crazy. I told the guy that he could look at the cameras and that would prove that I was innocent. He said that I could argue it another time. In that moment, I saw another store employee starting to walk by. She was not looking at me and did not seem to know what was going on with the shoplifting situation. I walked up to her and asked her if they had store cameras. She stopped and looked confused for a moment before saying yes. I turned back to the guy to try to tell him to look at them again, except the man was now gone. I looked around and saw him walking away quickly. This was strange. Now all of a sudden he was just letting it go. The employee of the store wearing the store uniform asked me why I wanted to know if there was cameras. I told her because that guy said I was shoplifting and I wasn't. As I was telling her that, I was pointing at the guy, who just went out of sight and went around a corner, so we couldn't see him anymore. The woman asked me who, not seeing the man, and I told her that he was gone now, but he said he was store security or something. The woman said that she had no idea who I was talking about and wasn't aware of a security guy. I asked her if I could just check out and leave then, and she said yes. Then she walked away and I felt much better, so I started heading towards the front of the store to check out. When I had made it about halfway there, I felt someone grab my shoulder from behind. I turned around and looked, and it was the same guy. He said that I was not allowed to leave and I had to go with him. He said that if I tried to get away from him again, I could be arrested. I told him that the lady working there said I could go. I also told him that she had no idea who he was. The man claimed that was because he was a plainclothes secret shopper, and because he was a secret shopper, most of the employees didn't even know that he worked there. He said that was to prevent employee theft as well. His story sort of made sense, but I still wasn't buying it. This guy just reeked of BS. I asked him if I could see some credentials, and he said yes after we left the store. He kept trying to usher me to the back to leave. But really, he was just seeming more and more sketchy to me. I continued to walk to the front of the store. The closer we got to the registers, the angrier the man got. He was borderline yelling at me. I told him to call the police. I didn't care. He didn't want to do that though, which seemed even more suspicious. He claimed that was because it would make everything worse and that I would get a felony, and he was trying to help me. However, when we got to the checkouts, there were more employees around. As soon as I got near them again, the man turned and walked away. I got in line and he was quickly out of my sight. I wasn't buying that the guy worked there in any capacity at all. He was totally unprofessional and saying stuff that didn't make any sense. When it was my turn to check out with the one item that I had, I reported the guy. Soon after, a manager came over and I reported the whole situation to him. I was told that the man did not work for the store and they would look for him. I was also told that I was not under any suspicion of shoplifting and I was free to leave. It was a big relief, and I left the store and then walked out to my car in the parking lot. When I got inside my car, before driving away, I saw the man come driving up really quickly. He stopped in his car sort of in front of me. I realized the same guy was driving. His car was just stopped sort of blocking mine for a few seconds. He wasn't looking at me, which was strange, but he seemed to know that he was blocking my way of leaving. I rolled down my window and yelled loudly that I was calling the police and that if he tried to follow me, I was going straight to the cops. He continued to sit there for about 10 more seconds, and then very quickly he drove off, screeching the tires. I left and went home and thankfully was not followed or anything. When I got back, my husband asked me why it took so long for me to get just one thing. I told him the crazy story. Looking back, I'm not sure why the guy kept messing with me. My only thought is that possibly he was going to try to kidnap me or something. That's maybe why he kept wanting to leave out the back. And it's also crazy how I saw him again in the parking lot. I'm glad that I never saw him again after that. I was a young teenager, maybe 13 or 14 years old at the time. It was Thanksgiving night, and normally it was just my parents and I having the traditional turkey dinner at home. However, my parents had invited friends over this year, and these friends brought their 2 dogs over to play with our family dog. The adults had decided to go out after dinner. I don't remember if it was a party or just a bar or something. Either way, since they weren't coming back until late at night, I was tasked with watching and caring for the dogs. I, of course, used this opportunity to watch TV downstairs in the living room. Since it was Thanksgiving and Christmas was right around the corner, our house was decorated. Most notable, there were these fragile plastic or glass fake candles on each window plugged in to light up. So I was laying on the couch watching TV with all 3 dogs snuggled up around me. A few times every hour they'd all leap off the couch and start barking endlessly at the front door right beside the living room. The first time I had gone over to the window next to the front door to see if my parents and their friends were pulling into the driveway early. The next few times I checked again, thinking maybe it was a neighbor out there or a wild animal in the yard, but I never saw anything. Each time I ushered the dogs back to the couch, relaxed, and it was fine. But it kept happening over and over again. I don't remember exactly how many times the dogs did this, but the last time I had gotten up to calm them down again, I noticed they were angled slightly more to the window with a candle than the door this time. I was intending to peek out the window to see if something was there, but as I did so, the candle was suddenly torn out from the socket in the wall and broke against the wall behind me. The dogs erupted in more panic. I had no idea what to do, and I ran upstairs with them following. I didn't know exactly what my plan was. If this happened now, I'd most likely go outside to a neighbor. But regardless, I locked myself and the dogs in my bedroom upstairs until I eventually fell asleep. The next morning my parents returned, and I got in trouble for breaking their decorative candle. They'd never believe me if I told them what happened, and I'm honestly still confused. I really don't know what happened there. This is the craziest thing that's ever happened in my family on Thanksgiving, and it was just a couple of years ago in 2023. My family has a very strong tradition for Thanksgiving that's been going on for many years. We live in Detroit, and if you're a football fan, you probably know that the Detroit Lions play football every Thanksgiving Day. The game starts at 12:30 p.m., and it's always a home game in Detroit. This has been going on for many, many years. Starting with my grandfather, he used to have season tickets to the Lions, and then my uncle did as well. My dad would go to a lot of games also, and starting in the 1990s, we would always go to the Thanksgiving game. It became a group of us, up to 20 people, most of them family members, and sometimes we would bring friends as well. We usually sit in the same area and we carpool to the game. Most of our family lives just outside of Detroit, and we're only like 15 minutes from the stadium. So the tradition is to go to the game, and then afterwards we all go to my uncle's place and have turkey and watch the Cowboys game. A couple of years ago we went to the game as normal. We went there in 4 different cars, all packed full. I don't remember all the people that went, but there was a lot of us. Not everyone in the family goes, but I know that I was there with my wife, and my brother, dad, and uncles were there as well. So fast forward through the game, we lost again for like the 10th year in a row, but it was still a great time. Anyways, when the game was over, everybody was leaving the stadium. Ford Field, where the Lions play, is in downtown Detroit, but kind of on the edge of it, so there's a lot of places to park, but sometimes it's a bit of a walk. After the game, there's just a massive crowd of people pretty much all leaving at once. They'll walk through the city to wherever they parked, and it's easy to get lost from the group in this time, and every year we seem to. But we always find our way back to the cars and then leave. That year in particular, I did not have driving duties, so I was more relaxed. My wife and I walked back to where our car was without a problem, which my brother was driving. We were the first to get there, and soon enough, everybody else did. The car was a large SUV with 3 rows of seats, so there were 7 of us total in there. Some people I guess changed who they were going with, because it was a different group than we went to the game with, and everybody else had parked in different spots. The reason for that is because it's very hard to find parking close to the stadium on game days, and everybody has their own preferences of lots. Anyways, everyone soon called and confirmed that we had all the people. Well, I remember that there was this one guy sitting in the back of our car who I didn't recognize. I literally had no idea who he was. He was sitting next to my cousin Elise and her boyfriend James. For some reason, I assumed that he must be the friend of them, because James was sitting next to him and I was sure that they were talking. Then the guy put up the hood of his coat and I remember put in headphones and sort of looked like he was going to go to sleep or something. I didn't bother to ask who the guy was. Then we just left. No one questioned the man at all. We went back to where the Thanksgiving gathering was at my uncle's. Most of my family lives near the Indian Village area in Detroit, which is not that far away. So we all arrived back, and some people were already inside at my uncle's house. His place is pretty nice, and the house is large with 2 floors and a basement. We all left the car, including the guy that I had never seen before. Then we all went inside. When we did, I remember watching the guy, and he went right over to the stairs and walked up them. Nobody else seemed to really notice because he was kind of slick with it. It just struck me as really odd though. He didn't talk to anyone and just made a beeline for upstairs. Nobody seemed to be questioning who he was, but to be fair, there was a ton of people there. It's not uncommon that a family friend joins us to the game who's not always there, or joins us for Thanksgiving. Still, something seemed off to me. I mentioned it to my wife, and she said that she was also wondering who the heck that guy was. I said I assumed he was James's friend, and she said that's what she thought too, because he seemed to be talking to James. So we went over to him and asked him who his friend was. James said, quote, "I have no idea. I was wondering who he was and why he was sitting in the car with us." When he said that, I was shocked. Now, James was pretty new to the family with dating Elise, and it was only his 3rd Thanksgiving with us, so it's easy to see how he assumed the guy must have known us. I started going around and asking people, does anyone know who that guy was that went upstairs? Nobody knew who on earth I was talking about. I was describing him, and everybody thought that I was making it up as a joke. For a moment, I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone, but eventually a few of us decided to go upstairs and confront the guy. He hadn't come back down yet, and it had been a good 5 to 10 minutes, and there was no reason to go upstairs anyways. There was nobody else up there, as there were only bedrooms up there, and the whole Thanksgiving gathering was on the main floor. So me and my brother decided to go upstairs. We walked up there, and when we did, at first we heard nothing and we didn't see the guy. There was a long hallway and we started to walk down it. Soon we heard footsteps. We called out asking who the guy was and why he was up there. There was no response. We heard some noises coming from one of the bedrooms. So we got to the door and then we opened it. When we did, we saw the guy. We asked him who he was immediately and what he was doing. He did not answer. He was standing at the opposite end of the room and by the window. The next thing I knew, he quickly opened the window and literally jumped out of it to make his escape. It wasn't that high up, but still kind of far to jump it. We ran over and the guy had landed all right and he was now running through my uncle's backyard. He quickly left and took off into someone else's backyard. Very quickly, he was out of sight. We went back downstairs and reported what happened, and some people said they had seen him running away. My uncle went upstairs and soon after came back down and said the man appeared to have stolen a few things. So we called the cops and reported it. It was really crazy. That made for one of the most interesting Thanksgivings to date for us. I don't know why the man decided to go back with us. Was he at the game, or was he just walking around on the street and saw an opportunity? The whole thing is really crazy, but I'm glad that he didn't get hurt jumping out of the window and that he didn't hurt anybody else. I feel bad for my uncle though, who had some things stolen. I was organizing some stuff in a storage unit until late on Thanksgiving night after dinner one year because I was moving places later that weekend. I share a storage unit with my mom and dad in a kind of sketchy area in town, but a part that I knew nonetheless. All my stuff was in the back of the unit, so I had to do a lot of lifting and moving. It was dark out and I was the only one left in the storage lot. Our unit is on the outside lot. As I was taking stuff out and getting it ready to move for the next few days, I saw a man come out of the inner storage lot inside the building. I kind of got a sketchy vibe from the dude, but he seemed homeless. So I said happy holidays and he asked to help me, but I insisted I was fine on my own. He then left and I continued moving stuff back into storage. The guy then showed up again and approached me closer this time and said, "You sure you don't need any help?" And I said, "I'm good, but thank you." Then he said, "Look, I need help moving my stuff into my storage, so can you open the door for me in the inner lot?" At that moment, I knew something wasn't right. I declined, saying I needed to get home and it was important, to which he responded, "I think what I need to do is more important." My anxiety started kicking in hardcore. I finished packing my stuff and clutched my keys to the car to get out. I locked my storage unit up, all while having a conversation with the man. I tried to keep my cool because I had no idea if he had a gun or a knife on him. I said I would help him, but had a plan to start running, had my phone ready, and made sure that he stayed ahead of me. I then told a fib that my mother was sick today and it was a hard day. After hearing this, the guy started to be more friendly and nice. He then stopped before we got to the door and went, "Actually, I don't need your help." At that moment, I knew that I used my wit to its advantage. He felt empathy and I started walking away. He then asked for a ride and I said that I couldn't do that. I started walking faster and he followed me and said please, and then asked why I looked so stressed and worried. I then got in my car and he started knocking on my window. I drove myself to the gate and I had to enter a code to get out of there. I had a feeling that he was going to mug me, rob me, or possibly worse. Thankfully, I was able to get out of there and drive away from him. The only thing I know is that I'm investing in some self-defense weapons, as that was the most terrifying thing in my life. This happened back in like 2014, I believe. It was Thanksgiving Day and I was at my aunt and uncle's house. I was in high school at the time, and basically my whole family was together as we are every year. Everybody was hanging out and having a good time. After dinner, when it got a little bit later, some people were going to go shopping. This was back when Black Friday was a huge deal, and a lot of the stores were actually opening at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night, which seemed crazy. There were a lot of big sales though. So one of my aunts started the tradition of going shopping at 6 and then coming back at like 8. She said if anybody wanted to go with and join her, they could, and there would usually be like 5 people that would go. The rest of us would stay back at the house. Now, I wasn't going to go that year. It was mostly the women, like my aunts and a couple of cousins. The guys were too busy watching football, which is what I would want to do rather than shop on Thanksgiving night. So I recall that at about 5:30 it was dark out because it's late November and it was also pretty cold, probably like 35 or 40 degrees. My aunts and cousins left to go Black Friday shopping and the rest of us stayed. However, they came back inside less than a minute after leaving. They said there was some sketchy-looking guy standing at the end of the driveway creeping them out, and he wasn't moving. This caught most of our attention. From where we were in the house, you could not look out of a window and really see that spot. My aunt's and uncle's yard was pretty big, and it had lots of trees on it. Plus, their driveway was actually really long, and it curved slightly as well. It seemed like an odd thing. This neighborhood was not one where people would walk down the street. There was no sidewalk, and it was also a cul-de-sac, so not that much traffic at all. A few of us got up to go and see, including myself. I remember walking to the front door and going outside. Then I walked out and started going down the driveway with a couple other people. Soon we were able to see the end of the driveway, and there was in fact a man standing there. I thought that he would have been gone by then. He looked fairly young and was average height, but pretty skinny. He was wearing a hooded sweatshirt with the hood covering most of his head. He also appeared to be barefoot, which was strange because it was really cold outside. But perhaps the most weird part was that he was just standing there facing away from us and looking down. And he was right smack in the middle of the driveway, blocking anybody from leaving. Somebody called out to him, asking what he was doing. There was no response. I think that everybody was a little creeped out, maybe a lot creeped out. People didn't seem to recognize him as living in the area. Someone else asked him to move, which he did not. Then somebody asked him in a nicer tone if he was okay. He still didn't answer. One of my aunts asked if he was cold and wanted to come inside, but somebody else quickly whispered to her to be quiet and not to offer that. Still though, the man did not respond. He barely moved at all, but was not completely still. Then, after like 5 minutes of this, one of my uncles started walking over to him. As he approached, at first there was still nothing. He asked the guy again what was going on. When my uncle got within like 20 feet of the guy, he suddenly turned and started running. The man went towards my uncle at first, who stopped, but then the guy turned and went off the driveway and behind some pine trees. He was pretty quickly out of sight. This was good and bad. He was not blocking the driveway anymore, so my aunt could go shopping now, but he was also somewhere on the property hiding now. He certainly seemed sketchy, and who knows what he was capable of. So most of the people went back inside, and me and like 3 other people stayed out. We started looking for the guy and calling out to him. I remember that we sort of went into the woods near the trees where he entered. At first, we saw nothing. We didn't go that far in though. As we were leaving that area, suddenly we heard the guy within the woods. This made us leave faster, as it sounded like he was approaching. We got back into the driveway, and I was almost at the house with my uncle about 30 feet behind me. I looked back and saw the guy come out of the woods and start charging at my uncle. My uncle took off running, and we all went inside and locked the door. The man did not try entering the house, and we called the cops. My uncle said that the guy looked like he was insane, and he said he wanted no part of fighting him, claiming that the guy probably had crackhead strength. We called the cops, saying that there was a guy who probably needed a wellness check and was trespassing. They came out and pretty quickly found the guy not far in the woods off the driveway. He turned out to be on drugs, which explained a lot. Looking back, I don't even know where he came from. That area was kind of far out in the country, so I have no clue. But thankfully, nothing like that has happened since. We always have Thanksgiving at my parents' house. It's normally just our immediate family, a pretty small gathering. 2 years ago, my sister Erin said that she was bringing her new boyfriend, Dylan. She'd only been dating him for about 2 months, but she said he was great, just a little shy. We all said sure, bring him. Mom cooked the usual turkey, mashed potatoes, and green bean casserole. Dad set up the folding table in the living room so we'd all fit. They showed up at about 4 p.m. Dylan was tall, maybe in his mid-30s, wearing a clean shirt and jeans. He looked normal enough. He shook everybody's hand. His grip was strong, but his smile felt forced. You could tell he was shy. We all sat down around 5. The first hour was fine. We talked about work, the weather, and small talk stuff, trying to incorporate Dylan. He didn't say much, just nodded and ate. He kept his eyes on his plate most of the time. When Dad asked him what he did for work, Dylan hesitated. He said something about construction, then added, "for now," like he didn't want to talk about it. At one point, my mom offered him more turkey, and he said quietly, "No, that's enough." But the way he said it made the table go silent for a second, as it was a very commanding tone. It was after dessert that things started to feel strange. We were in the living room watching football. Dylan was sitting on the couch holding a glass of cider. Erin was next to him, leaning in close, talking softly. I couldn't hear what they were talking about, but I later found out from my sister that she was asking when she could meet his friends. Then he said loud enough for us to hear, "I told you I don't like people prying into things." The room went quiet again. Erin looked confused. "I'm not prying," she said. "I'm just asking." That's when he stood up fast. The cider spilled onto the carpet. My dad said, "Hey, take it easy." And I started to stand, but Dylan's face changed. His eyes looked cold, like he wasn't seeing us anymore. He started yelling and screaming, not really saying any words I could understand. He grabbed the coffee table and shoved it over. Aaron screamed. Dad tried to step between them, but Dylan pushed him so hard he hit the wall. I don't even remember deciding to move. I grabbed my phone and ran towards the kitchen, calling 911. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. Our whole family now was in the kitchen with me as I made the 911 call. Dylan was still out in the living room. Then there was a loud crash. He'd broken one of the dining chairs. He was going on a rampage, destroying stuff in our living room, breaking or knocking over anything he could reach. When the police came, he didn't fight. He just stood there shaking, and they took him out in handcuffs. Erin was crying so hard she couldn't talk. Later we found out he'd been in some kind of psychiatric program. He'd stopped taking his medication a few weeks before, but Erin didn't know. Thanksgiving has been a really weird holiday for our family now since that one 2 years ago.